Welcome to the last part of endocrine system. We will discuss the general adaptation syndrome or GAS and also lifespan changes. So our body actually have a specific responses against stress, and this response is called the general adaptation syndrome or GAS. Okay, what is stress and what is the stressor? So stress is any stimulus, okay, that produce or make our body to respond by producing the neurotransmitter and also stress hormones. So the stressor is any stimulus that produce a stress response. Okay? So any stimulus that produces stress response is called as a stressor. It can be anything that causing us to be in the stressful condition. The stress will reset the body to meet an emergency. So before we go to this response, we have to understand that there are two types of stress. The first one is called the eustress. This is actually good stress because this is productive stress that help us to prepare for certain challenges. Okay, so this is a eustress. The second type of stress is called the distress. This is non-productive stress, which is a level of stress that is harmful and usually can cause to lower our resistance against infections and can also causing death. Now the response to stress, okay, so this is natural response to stress in our body. It has 3 stages. So this general adaptation syndrome or GAS has 3 stages. The first stage is called the alarm stage. This is controlled by nervous system, and this is actually the one that good stress. This is the eustress, and this actually prepare us to any time of challenges. Okay? So this alarm stage or the nervous system control for the stress is actually a good stress or eustress. So it is done usually by the sympathetic nerve system. The sympathetic impulse will increase the blood glucose and fatty acids. The heart breathing rates will be increasing. So our pupil usually will be dilating, and the skeletal muscles start, to contract to prepare for this challenge. And the hormones, there is also hormones and neurotransmitters called the epinephrine or adrenaline will be produced to prepare for this challenge. So this is the first step, right, or the first stage, which is a alarm reaction, which is a kind of the eustress or good stress. The second stage, okay, after the alarm stage, it will go to the resistant stage, and this one usually will be controlled by the hormones. Okay, so for the alarm stage, usually controlled by the nervous system. Okay, and this one's the one that will be controlled by endocrine system, the resistant stage, and this become the distress, which is non-productive stress or responses. It's usually slower and longer lasting, and then the cortisols and some other hormones related to stress will be produced, and then it will increase the use of glucoses and also there are some other hormones like ADH, renin will cause the water retention. So this is long-term stress. So this is usually a type of non-productive or distress. And then if the resistant state is not able to cope or resolve the test, then there will be the third stage. It's called the exhaustion state. So exhaustion stage, this is also type of distress, non-productive stress, and then this usually begin months or after the resistance stage, and there will be a lot of waste, wasting the energy, the time, electrolyte imbalances, and also suppression of immune system. And the effect mostly due to the long-term over secretions of cortisol, the stress hormone. And in this stage, most of the time, the person will become suicidal, thinking about killing themselves, suicide, so it can result in death. So these are the 3 stages of general adaptation syndrome. So maybe I can give you the examples to make it easy to understand these stages. Let's say I can use myself as an example. Okay, so I am scared of dog. Okay, let's say I am scared of dog. So when I see or meet dog on the street, let's say in front of my house, then what happens? I will have the first stage of this GAS response. So I am alarming myself. I am preparing for the challenge, whether to fight, the dogs or run away from the dogs. Whatever I choose over here, then my body is actually preparing myself for survival. So my breathing rate increase, my heart rate's gonna be increased, so my pupil will be dilated. I am ready whether to fight the dog or run away from the dog. And usually what happens, I choose to run away from the dog. So I will run from the dog and I will enter into my house. Okay. Now that's survival for me. And then after several hours, I look outside and the dog is still there. Now I am becoming to the second stage of the response, which is the resistance stage. So my cortisol is increasing, ADH, renin production will be increasing. And then after several hours, I check again, the dog is still outside. After several days, I check, the dog is still outside. Now I am become distressed. The second stage, the resistance stage, I become distressed. And if the dog is stay there for months or even for a year, maybe outside my house, then I am become more distressed. It's become maybe entering to the exhaustion stages. And in this time, there might be a suicidal thought, thoughts in my mind. So it's become, I'm not very productive. I'm wasting away my time, wasting away my glucose, my energy in my body. So this is kind of examples of the response against stress. Then maybe other examples, maybe you heard about some artists that they kill themselves, because of the stress that they have. They may be famous, but sometimes their life is not happy. It's causing them to be distressed, and finally they can enter to the exhaustion stage and kill themselves, okay, perform the suicide. So this is the response to the stress. It's called the GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. Okay, now if we look at the diagrams, let's say there's a stressor over here. Okay, it's a result from the changes in the environment, whether internal or external environment. And then the signal will go to the receptor, mostly in the brains, the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is the primary control for this GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. And the hypothalamus will, produce hormone that can increase the epinephrine over here, which is adrenaline. And it's going to be the short-term fight and flight, which is the stage number 1 of the GAS. So this is the survival mode. This is the preparation of challenges. Okay, so preparation against the challenges. These are the sign of this first stage of the GAS. The blood glucose increase, fatty acids. Okay, it's also broken down into glucoses. The heart rate increase, blood pressure increasing, pupil will be dilated, breathing so also increase, and etc. So this is the what we call the fight and flight action or responses. Like I mentioned before, if I see the dog, I might be fight or flight or run away. Okay? So this is the alarm stage. And then if the stress is staying in our body or maybe outside, and then our body, the gland, start to produce the cortisol. Okay? So the cortisol is released, and then if it is long-term release, it can cause the second stage, long-term adjustment. This is what we call the resistance state. If it is long-term production of cortisol, then this resistance state will go to the exhaustion stage, the final stage. And usually on the final stage, the individual is become so tired, and they might have a suicidal thought on their mind. So this is the control for the stress responses. And this is step-by-step events on the general adaptation syndrome. So in the response to stress, the impulses are conducted into the hypothalamus. So this is the main control for GAS. And then sympathetic impulses will produce the neurotransmitter, which is epinephrine. It can increase the heart rate, breathing rate, dilations. And this is the first stage, the alarm reaction, which is, this is actually eustress. It's a good stress for preparing against the challenges. And then if it is continue, if the stress continue, then it starts with the hormonal control. The corticotropic releasing hormones will increase the SCTH production, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and these adrenocorticotropic hormones will increase the production of cortisol, and the individual start entering to the second stage, which is the resistant stage. And these cortisols will be used for making a lot of glucoses, because we need energy when we are thinking, when we are stressed. We actually use a lot of glucoses, use a lot of energy. And then if it is continuously produced, the cortisol continuously produced, then the second stage will enter into the third stage, which is the exhaustion state. In this case, then our body is become very tired, exhausted. The electrolyte is kind of depleted. A lot of things happening. The immune system is becoming weaker, and finally, the individual might have the suicidal thought. It needs help in this second stage and the third stage of GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. Okay, that's for the response against stress. Now, the last things, we're gonna talk a little bit about lifespan changes related to the endocrine system. And when we get older, then most of the endocrine glands will decrease in size. It's shrinking. And the most, the one that is really have effects on immune system, like a thymus gland, it's gonna be shrinking more. Then the individual, the older people will have lower immune system because the thymus gland shrinking, the T cells will be produced less. Okay, the maturation of the T cell will be less, and then that individual usually will be prone to infection, especially viral infection. And then the muscles, the skeleton strength will be decreases too. The growth hormones level will be declined. And that's the reason why the bones, the muscles become smaller, especially the muscle becomes smaller and become weaker. ADH level also will increase due to the slower elimination. Calcitonin levels will decrease, increasing risk of osteoporosis. The PTH level changes contribute to the osteoporosis also, especially on female. And then the insulin resistance, which is in the liver cell, will develop, and it might cause the type 2 diabetes. Okay, so this insulin resistance on the liver cell, it can causing the type 2 diabetes to this individual or the older people. Changing in the melatonin secretions, and then it will also affecting the sleepiness, the body clock, maybe less sleep because of this lower melatonin secretion. Sometimes some people take the sleeping pill, the melatonin pill from outside in order to get sleep. And this is the one that I mentioned about the thymosin productions that will decline because of the size of the thymus glands will be smaller, and it will increase the risk of infection, mostly very prone to the viral infections like flu, COVID-19. Right? So this older individual is really prone to the infection of viruses. Okay. I think that's all for the endocrine system. So we finish the endocrine system, and then we'll see you again for the next chapter and discussion. Goodbye now.